Um, this is something that we did last year. I mean, last time we organized a conclave. Last time we didn't have a name for it. This time we decided we're going to keep the format, and we thought we should give it a name. So instead of a typical panel discussion, we have a panel and delegate discussion, and we called it the PanelGate discussion. And the idea is that we all sit together at the end of a day of a good few periods of classes to reflect about what we've heard. If anybody has questions, you could ask questions. Any comments in response to any of the speeches, you can share those responses. Any reflections from the day that you feel you want to share, you're welcome. Any comments to the speakers or to the organizers is welcome. If you have realizations, takeaways that you want to share, you're extremely welcome. So basically, you can share anything and everything that you feel, hopefully related to the topic. If there's something completely quirky or offbeat and you really think you should say it, that's also welcome. We had scheduled for 2 hours. We are a bit behind schedule, so we may have about 1.5 or 1 hour, 45 minutes, which should be fine based on our experience last time. Maybe to start off with, if anybody had a question they wanted to ask from the morning's presentations that you want to ask now, maybe we can start off there. If from the morning's presentations, yeah. Do we have mics?
No. My name is Anis Kutti. I am a career counselor. I just wanted to know about architecture. So what is somebody who can from the team, what is the mission and vision of Coearth? That is what we want to know. Something from anybody in the panel. Because you invited a plethora of people, just not architects and engineers. So what was the idea behind that? That's what I wanted.
I think Rashid in the morning probably explained it, but I'll do a recap. So Coearth is actually an organization that came about because of a similar conclave, I think in 2019. Some people approached us to organize an event in response to the Kerala floods. And they asked us to present solutions. And we said, we don't have solutions for you, but we can organize and get you people who have solutions. And we got Professor K.T. Ravindran from Delhi, Mohan Rao, the landscape architect from Bangalore, Prashant Hedava, an environmental planner from Auroville, Swasini Iyer, an architect, and Sandeep Vermani from Gujarat. And we organized Conclave 1. And then we realized that there's more potential in being a collective, and then we formed Coearth to engage in activities that promote or that respond to socially and environmentally responsible architecture. So we do, as Rashid said in the morning, we do some pro bono work for charities. We organize workshops, seminars. Yeah, so that's about Coearth. Any other questions?
Hi everyone, I'm George Thomas. I run a experiential learning school based in Trivandrum. It was a great event thanks to Coearth and all the fantastic work that was showcased by the architects here. Kudos to you. One observation I have as an educator and also because I am into alternate learning spaces is when we look at schools today in the urban spaces mostly, you see very small parcels of land being converted completely. The core essence of early childhood education is play. And that play also connected to nature, mud. The essence is completely taken out when the architecture comes out in the urban schooling today. And most schools today talk about highly sophisticated, air-conditioned classrooms, very colorful, jazzy looking furnitures. But the fact that these colors do a lot of distraction and we need to work with nude colors, we need children to focus, we need children climb trees, have them fall down into the mud, fail and learn from failures and do a lot of physical play is something that I see missing in a lot of the architecture when it comes to the urban schools. I mean, when I saw Pooja's work, I did see that because it's again in a rural setup. But in the morning session, a lot of work by Bijoy, I did see that you have created spaces for play, but I also understand that you have a lot of limitations with regards to land available. But I think since this is a room filled with architects and only few people like me who are into education, I think it will be great for all the architects here to think about real active, physically vibrant spaces for children to fall and fail and interact with mud and nature, because that's the true essence of learning. So that's something that I would like to see more in the school architectures. That's just a observation. Thank you.
Media ma'am, do you want to respond to that?
Hello, I'm Madhavi. I run a very small school here, and she's my colleague Raji. What he said is very true, that playing with mud and climbing on trees is very important. But I wouldn't do it in my school because I'll have parents, coming after me, because they're very careful about, nowadays parents are more worried about allergies, and a very small injury, they make a hoo and ha about it. So it's the best thing for the person running the school is to play safe and not let children climb trees or jump too much or run around too much in the classroom. But we do have physical activities. Mine is actually a very small school. I don't know whether I should be speaking here at all. I started with an 8 cents land, and now it's around 73 cents over a period of 25 years. So I have the reality check here. I can't be building a school which is, very modern. I just started small and then kept adding on to it as and when possible. So that is how I grew up to this 25 years. So I have always a limited thinking because everything is limited. So you have to work with what you have and make things as best as possible for the children. So everyone doesn't have the luxury of thinking of grand buildings. I loved all the buildings shown here. I just went into some imaginary world where I was running those schools, and it was fun. Actually, the colorful schools, the maximum I can do is make my school colorful, because when the children touch the walls, the lower part is dirty. So that lower part becomes very colorful the next time, because I need to paint only half the wall. I need to spend only that much money on painting. So that is how I go about running my school. I need to have the best things for my children, but there's a limitation to small school owners. So that's the reality. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we first must thank you for this conclave. It's come at an opportune time. We all know there's a crisis in education. Over the last 30 days, we've seen it happening, and it's come almost to a conclusion today. But I don't know if it's really going to be a conclusion, but it's an opportunity for change. And I think a change which is desperately needed in the field of education. We see it, as an architect, as a practicing architect, as somebody into academics, I can see that desperate need for a rethink of our system. And especially at school level is look at creative education, filtering in right from the bottom. Because when they enter, say, an architectural field, it's almost like you have to debrief them before they actually, move into this. Yeah, thank you.
Hello. Thank you for this conclave. This was very active for us. Anyway, I represent Vadirama in this English school, Kodiyathur, which is nearby, 20 kilometers away from your same district. My question is, you have shown many schools will be school here, but that needs many fund. Fund is the main problem for us. So can you suggest any idea for raising fund in the campus other than fees and like that? And another question is, can you visit our premises, our place, to see our school, and can you suggest any ideas for enhancement and renovation of the campus and school? That's my question.
So there are a lot of architects in the hall. Everybody's welcome to approach him later in the evening. With regards to the first question, Harris, do you want to?
Hello. I'm not responding to that question.
Okay.
I have a different question.
Fine.
All the accomplished, architects who have been interested to education are sitting here. and it was very insightful today. I've been working in the education for the last 2.5 decades. I have 2-3 points to put forth. Any one of you can respond. First of all, the education today is based on the principle of equality. It's not based on the principle of equity. So equality among unequals is inequality. Hope I'm making
pass ചെയ്യാനാണ്.
Education is based on equality. It is not based on equity. So,
Hint.
hope you are clear, right? Equality among unequals is inequality. Correct? So, when do you think an equity-based design will come into base? For example, I have a class of 35 students. They are not equal. If I am going equality for these 35 students, it is inequality. Hope it is clear? So where do you get an equity-based architecture? Point number one. Everybody is inclusive. Everybody is considerate. Point number one. Number two, ma'am has said very beautiful word, life, space, and architecture. When do you think about experience, space, and architecture? Because end of the day, school is all about experiencing. It's more than life, it's all about experiencing. From the boarding point till the child is getting off the bus, it's all about experience. The school is invisible. The building is only building. The school is totally invisible. The teachers are there, books are there, building is there, but the school is invisible. So where do you get that experience from an architectural perspective? Hope it is clear, my question. You want more clarity? Thank you. Please respond.
Need to write a question and think about it again. But what you said about equality and equity, I think if we create, I mean, why are we even bifurcating with the bunch of people entering into the room? Why can't we, I mean, we are working with one of the institutes where there is the intellectual challenge people were there, they're forming a center. So their first thing was they wanted to keep the regular students and these kids together so that they could able to learn from them, not from the school and the system. So the whole point is that can we even think everybody as human, as one, and be with along with them and then behave very rationally with them. That makes a space. That makes, I mean, if they found a corner to discover that there is an ant walking on the wall and they're observing it, that's where the learning is happening. And that's, I think, as you said, that what we can do as a designer to give an choice to make your own space and experience, the series of experiences, not same as mine, of yours and his. I can choose my path to enter in, to meet my friend, to go and have tiffin and to hide from my teacher. And the other one will do exactly a different point, but is there an opportunity? Is the built form is giving an opportunity to do that? Is the unbuilt is giving an opportunity to do that? So I think we have to think more about the opportunities that could be created when we are building or decided not to build much. So that is what my perspective about it. That is what we are trying to do. And it is not that as an architect I'm saying it. It is about after we build a project, we observed it into the project that we never thought, like in the first project, we never thought the wall becomes the slide also. This is what their observation, this is not what we did. So I think most of the things are into the other side, that if we hear them, if we try to understand what are they trying to say, and then we do it, most of the things will be resolved. And I think it is equally same, because we are also struggling with a lot of educationists. We are working with a lot of schools. We are not getting everywhere Keshav Gavit. We are getting the different system, different trust, different teachers which are there only looking education as a part of their job. And then it is difficult when you tell them that this is the freedom you wanted to craft into the particular project, they are denying it. That, as you say, you have a problem with the parents. There are a lot of problems along with the trustees, the parents, the students, the system, and now the social media. There are so many things which are affecting the decisions also, design decisions also. So let's hope that 5%, 10%, and whatever percentage we could able to inculcate and show them that this is the strength of the space or the experience that you are saying it, could be an achievement.
No, I'll try to respond. I think the first question has to do with, I think it's a larger question about education itself. I mean, I'll tell you about our office. I mean, people who come to our office to work, for instance, they come from different backgrounds, they have different skills and talents. And it's unfair for us to expect all of them to be good at certain things, you know. So, I mean, you're trying to build an environment where everybody gets a chance to excel in what they're good at. And I think in a school environment, that's what you hope is happening. That the teachers are enabling those who, you know, have certain skills to further those. I mean, just like Pooja said, you know, that they find what is interesting to them. And that's not I mean, as an architect, I have very little to do with that. I make the opportunity for those things to happen by making open space. I'll tell you also the relationship between these two schools, Neve and Ira, that I showed today. With Neve, the client came with a very sophisticated idea. She had a very clear understanding of what she wanted, and she had, not architecturally, but in terms of experience, that I want to have kids to be outside, I want a butterfly garden, I want kids to play with water so that they understand how water works, you know. And so we were designing basically in response to her ambition. When we came to Ira, and we got Ira just maybe a year or two after we started working on Neve, and we brought to Ira all of, like I was telling someone today, that I was riding that wave, you know, whatever Kavita gave us, I came to Ira with that, whereas that client didn't really have this kind of an understanding of things. She just had this CBSE list, you know, the thing that I showed you. And so we've done a lot of that. Some of it she didn't know she was getting, and then when it was built, she said, oh, this is how, you know, and then she's now found ways to use it, or the kids have found ways, just like Kavita had imagined in her school. So I think in terms of your second question about experience, I mean, I've always, especially thanks to IIM Bangalore and this experience growing up in that building in a way as an architect, a lot of us are caught up with the idea of architecture as something that has only got to please our eyes, you know, that it's only on the retina, that you look at a screen or a magazine and then that's architecture, as long as it looks good in photographs. You're even designing sometimes thinking of where the photos could be taken so that it will look great. Whereas for really something to move you, you have to have that embodied experience of being in a building and feeling, you know, the temperature, the texture. I mean, just like Anand's amazing building, that you can almost get a sense of inhabiting that building and getting a sense that you're alive, you know. We're searching for that. I mean, you go to any small temple or, you know, mosque or, you know, mausoleum, somehow they're able to deploy these things and give you that experience, whereas there are so few contemporary buildings that move you in that sort of fundamental way. All of us, I think, are searching for that holy grail, to find a way to get a building to give you that kind of, in a way, primordial experience of being alive, you know. And IIM does that. You come into that building, we've taken so many people there, that as you encounter that first pergola, it just lifts you up. It's like experiencing something that is both familiar and yet completely new, you know. And so experience is at the heart of everything we're trying to do, that brings you back a memory of something that is long forgotten and is also completely new.
Sorry. Actually, I wanted to answer the question of funding. I think it's a very important question because without that, you cannot see what you saw today, right? Because it's not only about designing a building, but also how do you bring everything together. So for the school project, I can share my experience and others can share theirs, but when we started, they didn't have money to build. So they started asking independent foundations if they can fund this project. And we got some 30% of the construction cost money that we got. After that, we understood that it's difficult to get the money. So what we started doing was uh, approaching to citizens of Gandhinagar who are living in the city and sharing the intention of the project. And we started a campaign, and with fundraising, people paid 500, someone gave 1,000, someone gave 5,000, and even the teachers of the school gave promised 2 salaries or 1 salary. That's how everything came together. And I think that way, it was something that more and more people got engaged with the project. And I think, thinking back, if one person would have donated everything, would not have the same intensity. I think that the contribution from the citizens of the city also brings attention, responsibility to the place that we are creating. So in many projects it has happened in our case like that, and I think that engagement is very, very important for the success of the project. Regarding the equality and inequality, I feel that biasness is the character of humans, right? There is no way one cannot be biased, and that biasness inside us can sometimes bring inequality, and that this biasness also is sometimes conscious and sometimes not so conscious. Sometimes we are not self-aware about that biasness. Like, for example, before working on this project, I had no idea about the issue of disability or how children live, because we are not exposed to that. And what Pooja also said, that about the mix, because in the United States, when I was working at Perkins, one big change that I have brought in the schooling is to not segregate people with disability or special ability. They are always together. And there are special tutors who are in the school. And I thought that was a fantastic idea, because moment when they are mixed, there is an awareness amongst other students, and that awareness itself can reduce biasness and sort of inequality. I don't know if we can ever remove inequality, because that component of biasness is never going to be not part of human character. So it is the quantum through which we can think about that. How can we reduce that? Now, having said, with that experience in United States, I propose this, that why we are building a school which is like a special school, because now we are creating again an island, because then there are same students, other students are not interacting. But the system of the way the school functions did not allow that. And when I was designing, when we were building this project, when the day of the inauguration, I felt that I hope this school shut down as soon as possible. There is no blindness in the world. And I hope that one day everyone is studying together. So it is this system that we as architects are working into, that in certain places we have control of our work, and certain larger dimensions we do not have that control. And it is again the question of policy making and looking at the education in broader aspect is something to be thought, because only then I think the whole process would be more integrated, because right now we did that to solve something, but it is not enough.
Okay, and then
I have one answer for your question. If funding is required, you need a credible person like him. Very simple. He stood up and said to the public that I wanted to rebuild this school, 5 school, 10 school. My credibility is your stake. My intention is your validation. I need money. How many crore you mobilized? 30 plus or 40 crore into first school 15 crore.
So, the name of my project, which is implemented in my tenure as a MLA, I was MLA for 15 years, three-time MLAs. My first school is not this. The other one he knows, that Nadakavu school. For that school, I could mobilize a huge fund from government itself first, but that was not enough for my accomplish my plan. Then I approached the concept of that project. This Prism is the name of that project. I think somebody might have told earlier. Prism is promoting regional schools to international standard through multiple intervention. That's the name of the project. I think the strength and beauty of this project is that multiple intervention. Not only the government, it's the government school. Anyway, government's responsibility is there. But if you want to develop a school like the infrastructure like this and the other academic activities and extracurricular activities, you will have to mobilize some more funds. What we are doing is, we are collecting or mobilizing the intellectual resource, technical resource, and financial resource from the society. Society is ready to give everything if you have a convincing project and if you have a credible leadership or team of leadership, people's representatives or the school principal or the PTA, whatever, a credible leadership or team should be there and a convincing project should be there. Then you will get everything from the society. That is my experience. This is the second school, and we could develop nearly 10 schools, 5 primary schools, Karaparamba, Chalavur, Pudiyangadi, GLP, and Medical College campus, the third high secondary school, 2 more in quarters, and that I could not complete the entire campus. So this is the approach. So intellectual resource is the main thing. The School of Mathematics associating with us. Some department from the university, NIT, and for some time this IIM was there, and our physical education colleges, the faculty is helping us to train the students in sports activities. Our physical education teacher may be capable of training only one discipline, either volleyball or athletics, something. If you want to coach give training for the hockey or football or cricket, you will have to seek the help of either sports council and physical education college. They are helping us. This is the responsibility of the people's representative to coordinate all these resources, the intellectual resource. Together, I developed, my approach was, I didn't allow the PWD or the corporation engineering wing to plan, master planning or for the architecture design. Only the private architects under the leadership of IIA, Indian Institute of Architects, Kozhikode chapter, not Kozhikode, center, they helped us. This school is designed by Design Ashram under the leadership of this Brijesh Shahjal and Nimisha Hakim. They were the architects. And I got the IIA National Award for socially responsible project for this school. The first school designed by one William Cooper, the Scotland, Narakav, the first school, Narakav, Scotland, that services was given by the one foundation, Faisal and Shabana Foundation. Actually, they belongs to this Calicut itself. They were my neighbors, but they are working in Dubai, and it's a big businessman. But they have a foundation, so they were ready to help for helping the developing of one school in their city. That's why I could mobilize nearly 15 crores for that school. For this school, I could mobilize the MLA fund, government, the fund specially allotted by the then Finance Minister, Dr. Thomas Isaac, and some donations like this. The library, you might have seen the library. The books and the furnishing was given by the DC Books, the one top publisher in our state. And the dining hall furniture was given by this Bevco CSR. CSR, one government departments, CSR, using that. And for in the medical college campus of school, we have a augmented reality, virtual reality laboratories there, lab is there. It was given by one Illusia Labs from Cyberpark, one company working in our Cyberpark. They have donated it. And so many. So financial resources there, technical resource by IIA and engineering divisions, and intellectual resource like School of Mathematics, some departments, higher education institutions. This is the approach. So everything is available here. Only two things we need. One, a convincing project. And the other thing, the team, the credibility of the team. That's enough and more, I think. No one will say no to your approach or your initiative for the developing government school. If you go for develop a college, you won't get that much support, I think, because everybody is having an emotional attachment to the regional schools. And you just think of the teachers, our school teachers, we have to our school teachers, we have an emotional attachment than our college teachers. That's the, so alumni. In the third school, medical college campus school, we have mobilized all the furniture in the classroom furniture, modular furniture, that was given by the alumni. The alumni or each batch who passed out in 1918, you passed out in 1993, and like that, every year. We convened a big meeting of the alumni there. All the existing teachers who have retired teachers came, and we have given a respect to the teachers, and almost all the alumni, we have more than 3,000 persons attended that meeting. Then in that meeting, first I presented the vision and the architectural design, which how their school is going to change, like what is the transformation is going to be taken place. That we could present it there. Then itself they offered, we will do this thing, we will do this. The alumni support I got mostly from that third school, medical college campus. If you have enough time to visit that school, you can see the classroom furniture, all the furniture given by the alumni. That's the way.
I think there's
Thank
a lot
you.
of, I mean, I think in some sense, as you said, there's one is about leadership, one is having clear vision, and then everybody just follows. But I think I just want to add, I don't know if you saw in the video, that this school was almost on the verge of closing down. Admissions were diddling, nobody was taking care of the building, the property. And from that situation, it's come to this situation where you're having architecture conferences, but also architecture awards, but also the students, the school performed, ranked within the 10 top schools, government schools in the whole country for their academic performance. So, and also in the video, you can see there's a great deal of dignity and pride that the students and the teachers take. And I think that's an important message which also comes across in all of your projects, that when you treat people with respect, when you give them environments that have been made of care. The care that I think there's Ellen DeSenayeg is a sociologist. She talks about when you invest care into the space, people read it as that they have been cared for and they're valued and they're respected. And then that gives people self-respect and dignity. And I think we all do this when we pick restaurants, holidays. In some sense, it's to make ourselves, in some sense our own self-worth that we're trying to cajole. But I think we're glad that we could organize the event in this venue. and I hope that later you'll get to see around, you'll walk around to see the campus. And do take that opportunity to see. I think you've been limited to the dining hall in this venue, but then please do walk around the rest of the campus as well.
One of the school is the third best government school in the whole country, which was an ordinary school. Now this has been ranked continuously for the last 7 years, the third best government school in the country.
Can I? Okay.
Today, sorry, I mean, first of all, very interesting and very beautiful and sensitive designs, and a lot of things to take away. I'm actually both an architect and also I teach. And the question is, which I have is architecture deterministic? Can we predict that that's the outcome which we will get? Because I have often, as an architect, I've always faced bad effects of, bad education, which is literally coming from the primary level. To give an example, if I tell somebody what is the Pythagoras theorem, they will tell it. But if I tell something like that, okay, if I have a ladder which is 10 feet in height and I keep it against the wall and it is some distance from the wall, how high will they really be able to climb? And suddenly there are many people who will not answer that. So it's such a fundamental thing. So there is no connection which has happened between in the mind of that young man who has come for employment, and you can trace it all the way down to school education in one sense. The problem is that as an architect, I always struggle with this situation that can architect really do a social reform? And the other question as a teacher also, can a teacher do social reform? And there are so many theories that side also, like Bloom's taxonomy, and a lot of people have written about teaching and the theories behind teaching and how to teach concepts. So does it percolate into architecture also? And can we use those concepts in architecture? And can we say that if we do this, this is the kind of school we'll get? Actually, it's a broad question which affects all projects, not just in schools. How do we know that we are contributing to that thing, or are we doing post-rationalization? It's a very tough, I'm sorry, I struggle with it for years together.
Would you like to answer that question?
Like to answer that? Wow, it's a tough challenge. Well, the only way to answer it is in a very dualistic sense. It's both yes and no. Architecture can predict or create predictable future, or architecture may not. Anyway, I'll go back to the first inquiry which somebody did. I don't see him sitting there now. I think he's there behind. He was commenting about, these designs will be looking very, he was talking about these school designs. Of course, he will refer to the play area missing, but the larger part of the question seemed to be how the designs become very sophisticated, they look pretty or attractive or whatever. And of course, there were your designs, where you brought in that informal spaces and all. He was referring to it. We all do know that the very idea of a school formalizes learning. Incidentally, Krishnamurti also speaks about it, and hence, when the school starts, Krishnamurti also tries to speak about the trap which education is. So I was trying to ensure there is no formal education in that sense. And incidentally, thank you very much, sir, for the last 10, 12 slides you showed. Quoting from JK were extremely revealing. Of course, most of them I had read and reread, but I think it was very, very revealing for people around here, I hope. So if schooling itself does formalize learning, the school design also does formalize naturally. It will end up. It will formalize the form, it will formalize space, it will formalize the perception, it will formalize the looks. When my children joined Center for Learning, CFL in Bangalore, they were in a small place called Shibumi in the outskirts of Bangalore. And there were 5 or 6 huts I remember when we went there for our interview, as the usual system in the larger Krishnamurti Foundation, there is no interview for children. They interview us. There was a 2-day rigorous interview in CFL to see whether we could be admitted to CFL. And you know, the buildings were like dhaba structures, roadside dhaba structures, Shivumi. What it was, I mean, the original campus of the place. There later on another school called Shivumi also went there, then moved out. And later, CFL got new buildings. Even though the architects, Jeet and Natasha and the Good Earth team, they did a great job in not making the school very formal or attractive or, very sophisticated or whatever it is. I remember the faculty there, Shashi, and a lot of them, they said, from the time they moved from those shack-like structures to these so-called design structures, however simple, humble they were, it made a difference. So, parents would come and say, wow at it, or children would say something about it. The whole question then is, should we formalize? Now, also going back to what you said, indirectly speaking, you mentioned equity, equality. At this age of mine, I'm in a position where I can question architecture itself. I hope you'll give me the freedom. Increasingly, one is feeling uneasy about, well, most of you will question me. Increasingly, one is feeling very uneasy about very designer looks everywhere. Wherever we go now, it's all very designer. Everything is designer looking, very attractive, very pretty, very nice. Very, whatever, photogenic, everything is there. But then, what is the essence of all of them? You're also mentioning about the looks. Think even from which angle we should take the photographs. Now coming to the school. Well, I'm not against a designer school. Incidentally, my own experience is with the 6 schools. 2 of them built, 2 partly built, 2 unbuilt for varied reasons. So there is a little designer look in what we also did. But luckily we got from different kind of people. There's one was an ashram school for a Guruji, which is completely built. Other one was for, there are different contexts. Reggio Emilio school, then one Waldorf school, like this, there were different backgrounds. But again and again, one was questioning, how much should we design a school? Again and again. And personally, my opinion, I am from an extremely small, rural, Kannada medium school. And many of my friends, I know they are doing fairly well. And we had all those photographs which, you said, the typical school designs. Well, school designs matter, but I think finally the teacher, the student, the ambience, what happens in the school, they matter much more than the design itself. The design is, of course, nice, but there's something more than design we need to look at. So either we can look at schooling, which is learning and education, or we can look at school as an architecture.
Yeah, there's a question here, then we'll come to it.
Okay. Hi. I'm Amal. I'm an educator and an astrophysicist. So it's been really great to be here today because as an educator, like I also run a school of my own, which is a preschool, and it's few cents of land, 200 meters away from my home. So at times, we go under this low phase as a one who run the school because it's not always good stories there. We have a lot of financial issues and everything. But at the end, like when we come to a space like this, we really understand what we are for and how we are different and what we are looking for to the future. So in that way, it was very rejuvenating to be here today. So like Manas Chakrabarti told in the morning, like, I have a question, like, or a comment, or anybody can answer it. Like, we were, like you said, the example of the doctor who was 100 years back coming to this theater and he would have no idea what is happening here. But a teacher who comes again, it's the same. So what would be the reason for that? We know everything has advanced and changed, but why not our style of teaching or education? What could be that reason? Like, if any of you have any ideas, let me know. And thankful to Pooja, thankful to Siddhartha Menon for giving me a lot of wisdom in my journey. And I would really take that example of Siddhartha, sitting in the sunset quietly, few students or school students sitting. I don't know whether we get that opportunity at all, where we are all for learning and education, but I don't think a student gets such a moment in his life. Okay. And regarding my school, it's a few cents. And if any of the architects here, it's a 1 hour journey from here. If any of you are interested in any kind of architecture experiments, you all are welcome. And like if you have any experiments there, maybe a mud house or anything of that sort, which really links with nature, because we focus on art integration, nature integration, and Montessori, kind of mixing all this together and play-based learning. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. Before we have direct answers to both of your comments, it will be nice if we can have more people share their thoughts, comments, questions, and maybe together we can answer them.
Hi, I'm Anis. I am an education researcher. Education and child development is my area. I have been independently developing a conceptual and practical framework on child development and education. So what I remember is the old Rabindranath Tagore's story, parrot training. Most of you must be knowing. A king got a beautiful parrot which is lacking discipline. Her movements has no order, flickers. So the king wanted to have the parrot disciplined. So he ordered for golden cage, great artist for her costumes, and great teachers from different parts of the world to teach her. And every day, thick and thicker books, the pages of the books were fed to the mouth of the parrot. One day, the parrot got disciplined. Its movement is stopped. So this is the famous story of parrot training. Why I told this story is the golden cage. Making the golden cage is very easy. Making an impressive building for education is easy. I really appreciate our MLA Pradeep Kumar, please, for your great leadership and such infrastructure is made. But the challenge is, if you may, I appreciate that kind of leadership. We are lacking that in our country. But I disagree with the kind of designs we make, or the designs we get clapped for is something else, and the designs that really helps the child development is something else. The child is in the center. Nobody considers, just like the parrot, everyone is concerned about the luxurious stay for the teachers from the abroad, and the golden cage, the costume designers, but nobody cares about the child, the parrot. The child is being died. So I would say my humble request to architects is the theories of child development must be the center of design philosophy. I am appealing with my friend George, who started the conversation. He said that the children need to play. There should be enough space for play. And my friend told me, told that the equity matter. Equity and equality, I'm also not explaining, but I think many of us must be understanding, because see, the fundamental thing is this: the child is in the center, and we should not be ignoring him or her. Thank you.
Pradeep Kumar sir needs to leave. He has a meeting, and so we're going to have to excuse him. We'd wanted him to stay further. Would you like to say anything before you leave? Or?
So I'm leaving now because I have to travel nearly 1 hour from here to place Tabarasheri to attend a meeting there. So I just want to comment on your approach. So far as our project is concerned, the development of a school is not a building construction. It must be an atmosphere creation. The atmosphere for make the student confident and for make them to inspire them in learning and make them dreaming. It's a different level. That is what we have always expressed to those who are involved in the designing of the campus and etc. If there is any minus point in that concept, if you have given us a nodding, whatever possible change can, I don't know whether it is possible now at this stage or not. Some architects, they had some years back, 2-3 years back, they had come here for a meeting here. Then they disagree with the uniform system we adopted here. Then I told them that you design a new form of uniform, which is fit for our climate and our culture. We are ready to accept that, but they didn't respond after that. Like that, if you have any suggestion to add with the atmosphere here, to change the atmosphere here, then we are ready to accept that. It is designed by a very good architect, and we got the award also. But I don't know whether it is very successful design or something like that. We have tried to keep the open space maximum. That area, there is a basketball court. It was a dumping out of this public area. Then we filled it. It was a school property. It was a government school. Then nobody is caring in this school. It was about to be closed at that time, and the public is dumping the waste there. There is a basketball court, and you have the connection with all the areas. The back side, there is higher secondary block, and there is a courtyard. This courtyard, Then we made sure that this area, below, there is a dining hall space, We didn't close it. Continuation, you might have seen in the downstairs. This was the approach we tried to uphold.
I was not being, I'm sorry, I was not being critic of yours, sir. I actually was trying to appreciate what you have done. But what I was mentioning was your limitation, because the public will not, even if you and the team brings a wonderful design, what the public appreciates is something, and the impressive work is, the real quality work is something else. I was not critic of this school or not your work. I was talking in general.
Okay. That I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm leaving.
Good evening. My name is Jinu Kurian, and I'm an architect and teacher. I'm based out of Navi Mumbai in Maharashtra. And I don't have a question, but it's more of an observation um, which is connected with the question of funds. And Anand responded by illustrating how funds could be raised through community participation. And in this space, I have an observation, and that is that many a time when funds are raised, there are many claimants to the funds. And space or built environment is not the only claimant. There are claims by the librarian. There are claims maybe by, for just having a school bus. There are claims maybe to build capacity amongst teachers. And in the middle of all this, to draw this line from Charles Correa, that space is both a resource, but it is also a consumer of resources. And this sort of conflict that we find ourselves many a times of having to deal with space both as a resource and as a consumer of resources. That is actually a very difficult balancing act, especially when you're working in the social sector. And I can illustrate this by sharing an anecdote of a personal experience in recent months. I'm working with a community which is setting up a school in the outskirts of Panvel, which is a city in Maharashtra. And they set up this school 4 years back with 6 students. And this school is located close to a cluster of villages which does not have easy access to education. 4 years later, they have reached a count of 40 students. And when they started out of what was an abandoned poultry farm in a poultry shed. Today, it continues to remain in that poultry shed. The community raised 1 crore to build a new school building. But when the money was raised, there were many other claimants to that money. Okay, and in the process, the school, what was allotted to the school has gone for a school bus. The community and the teachers who are with the school, when they got together, they realized that there are more pressing problems than the building itself. And then they've come to a point that they're saying that until they need to go for CBSE affiliation, they will sort of keep building on teaching capacity, books, and things like that, and sort of hold on to the spend on the infrastructure, and then maybe raise more funds at a point to build the infrastructure. So my observation here is that, especially in the social sector, and I think today raising funds is perhaps not the most important, the most difficult problem, is that there are many claimants to funds. And we are one of the biggest, as architects, we are the biggest consumers of resources, at least in the short term. And one must also remember that space consumes resources in the long run as well, just by having to run that place, both visible and invisible costs. So yeah, so this conflict is something that I have observed, and in the presentations this morning and through the day had examples of both schools that are located in the public sector and also private education models. And the question of economics of education, and now with private equity coming into school education, it's just going to change the rules of the game in a very different way. So yeah, that's a set of observations.
Lokesh and then Hari.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This is a marvelous conclave, and I've learned one hell of a lot. There isn't a single thing about any of the speakers or any part of it that I didn't like. This Q&A session for me also brought up, it also made me think about how I respond to the various present. What was I feeling when I saw some of these slides here?
And when I walked into the Karaparamba school, I felt lifted. My spirits felt lifted. But more so when I found out that it was a government school. And when I saw the slides by Mr. Menon and just open, unplastered brick walls, it made me feel very good. Both felt good. And I think the need of the hour from the lower income groups is to try and lift their self-worth, their sense of confidence, and to make them feel that there is some equity in all this. And in government schools, I think a good design makes a hell of a lot of sense. And for the really schools for the wealthy people, they already have a hell of a lot of confidence. And it somehow... For the school for the wealthy, it's already quite, they have a lot of confidence. What they need is other things of sensitivity and so on. The average poor person knows much more about the environment around him than the average rich person. This is, I'm making some very broad generalizations, but this is roughly it. And this is what I felt when I saw the various slides and the presentations. That's all I have to say. Thank you for this conclave, Abid.
Hi, I'm Hari. I was trained as an architect, but I chose to do graphic design, and currently I work in the intersection of maths, literature, science, and a lot of other things. And I needed especially comments from Siddhartha and Manas, as well as the other architectural educators. The one thing that will be common throughout in the past as well as our future generations, the most important question, why do we do all of this? We need we need to be a good human first in order to be, in order to design good places or whatever it might be. And so for good spaces, we need good architects. And for good architects, we need we need good empathetic architects and designers to build spaces, products, and everything we use. And since I come from an architecture school, what I have experienced, and I think most of the architects here might have experienced, is that we have a very toxic work culture, which is very much emphasized and glorified in the architecture schools right now. And I want to ask, is this the way, like, do we need better empathetic architects or just better designers for a better tomorrow? And, people who teach at architecture schools, currently we just need a BR to teach in architecture school. I don't have a degree, by the way. So in B.Ed, Bachelor's in Education, I think there is a subject called Behavioral Psychology, where the teachers are taught about the mental health of people and mental health of students, how to teach a different types of students, which I don't think that kind of training is got to a person, a teacher or a faculty who is getting into a architecture school or a design school. So, yeah. So what is your comment on this?
Those are some tough questions, Hari.
Hi, I'm Dr. Shibu Raman. I happen to be here just on the day, and it's really, really good discussions that I managed to be part of, or at least attend some of this. I work in Cardiff University in UK. I'm a professor in architecture, so I think of this in two different directions. So I agree with all the comments that you made about it's not about the building, it's about the children. And as architects, what can we contribute to is also not about the building, but about the spaces or the environment that we create. So how do we think of education as a system to intellectually stimulate these children? How do we think of environment that can achieve that? Would transform the kind of discussion significantly. Obviously, like our dear MLA said, like Pradeep sir said, there's a lot of stuff that need to be put in place for a visionary educational system to kind of manifest. But importantly, one other thing, just to defend the architects here, is that much of our life is spent in built environment. Everything that you do happen to be, most of the time, happens in a built environment. So how do you design the built environment, impact our everyday life? How we move around, what we think, how do we transact with others, etc. So it's really, really important to kind of think of the entire education as a system of education within which building is also part of. Building could also be part of the learning. Building the way that Rishi Valley School might be using their natural environment as a way of learning is really important to kind of consider that asset. Like not every school in the country is blessed with that kind of nature all around. You happen to also teach in Dharavi, where you have 800 kids sitting in 3 small classrooms and taking turns to learn. So it's really important to think about like what is possible and how do you transform, how much do you invest in the building, or how much do you invest in the learning process and the system that you develop. But like you said, building is an asset, but it's also a liability that the more you build, the more you have to service it. So the less you build, the better it's for the environment. And you can see in one of the issue with our educational system is that we have a lot of gatekeepers which controls the education. So you look at like schools, there'll be stipulations on what should be the square meter per student. If you look at like architecture school, which I know quite a lot about, says that you need to have, Council of Architects rule says that you need to have compound wall around. Every cohort should have a classroom. But most of the time that classroom is essentially shut. You're not using them. Every cohort do not need a lecture theater. Every classroom, every cohort do not need a classroom. Some of that happens outside. Like when the kids are playing, what's the classroom doing? Maybe it could be used for something else, or some other cohort can use. So the building, how do you kind of look at the needs of that particular the design of that education and translate that into a viable minimum space requirement is fundamental. Otherwise, you end up actually overbuilding and over-servicing the building, and then you end up with all the other kind of... The issue with like what you're saying about like, parking space for the buses and stuff become priorities because of these gatekeepers, which are well-intended to maintain a certain quality, but nobody's critiquing those. The reason why we're having all these protests right now is because of the system. And who's kind of, critically evaluating the entire system to kind of come up with like a minimum program, minimum requirement in delivering the education that transforms the mind. I think that's really critical, that something that the architects should take notice of is that it's not about building the biggest possible building. Maybe the smallest building often deliver much better learning environment. You spoke about like um, some sheds being used for education, like CEPT universities. Um, model making area originally happened to be a storage shed that was built there for construction, but it was kept there for nearly like 20, 30 years before it's been replaced by a much grander model making space for the architecture student. So often, like, what is there? What's the assets there? Like a tree in this courtyard might be a valuable learning environment. I don't know how many of you visited Nadaka school. It's a fabulous environment to learn. Like, look at all the trees that they preserve. Look at how the library begin to open up into the nature, etc. It's like within a city center, you have a fabulous learning environment. So it's really, really important to kind of think from the designer from the perspective of designing the system first before designing the building. Doshi used to say that building can be designed by anybody, but architecture is quite unique. Not all the buildings are architecture. So think of that, like, not what you see as a school construction design program is often a building program, not creating translating a learning environment. That's just my penny worth of knowledge. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Shabana. Actually, I'm an architect, but right now I'm here as a student. Like to talk on behalf of a student. So I would like to use this opportunity to appreciate aptitude test including in our curriculum. Because I was very fortunate and I come from a good background. So I had an opportunity to be in that, go to CG and take that aptitude test, which made me clear what I have to be. So I think like board exams, our curriculum should also monitor aptitude testers very continuously so that like the students are filtered with their brains also. They know what they have to do. That's one of my suggestions. And next will be, like as we know, students are different. So they have different tastes. So there should be spaces for all the kids. Not only for people who are really good at academics, but also for who love painting or dancing, whatever. They should have their own corners, or they should have space to showcase those stuff. And my third request would be, actually the social life of a student is very bad. So I would really request the system, like here we have a lot of educators, that's why I'm saying this, to have a social time for them. Basically, when we are flushed out of this educational system, we doesn't know how to interact with the real social system. So I think that also we need to address those things, because we are at the end of the day, what we are expecting from education is to make us empowered to work in this social environment, right? So for that, kids also need this social life and everything. That is to the educators.
Hello, hi. My name is Sebastian. I'm here in this room from 3 different capacities. I'm an architect, I'm an academician teaching in an architecture college, and I'm also a proud father of a 6-year-old. So whatever has been discussed in the room, it's definitely connected with the 3 of these roles that I have. And first of all, let me begin with thanks to all the presenters who had a valuable amount of idea that was shared. So now the question, or rather, the note that let me begin with is that we have been sharpening our edge on how the learning spaces should be, academic systems, how it should be. We've been sharpening that, we've been refining that through conclaves, discussions like this. A lot of that is actually happening. So the question that I have is, in fact, from the third role, as a father of a 6-year-old. Today, when I went to the school, there was a PTA meeting which I had to. Sorry, I had to skip half an hour of your conversation. I came only half a But, and I was telling Abid also, if I have to join a session like this, I should definitely not miss a PTA meet at the school. So the thing there is, one of the things that was discussed is, for 6-year-old kid, probably that's a behavioral thing as well, where they do not prefer to be seated, they would roam around. It's a very natural thing at that age. But then, with that as a starting point, I would like to, open up the point that I really wanted to bring in is, we cannot be shying away from the fact that we have, different generations looking at learning from, different ways. And our education system for so many years have been stagnant, or there has been refinement, but that is not reflected in a massive scale. Whether we accept the national education policy, which is brought out as a reform to the educational system in India, whether we all accept it or not, there are new systems coming. So isn't it high time? That's where my question is. That's the core of my point here. Isn't it high time that we start discussing, number one, with the education systems, and secondly, the spaces, the architectural spaces, the schools, how can, or how are, or how would they be catering to the changing needs or the changing methods or the changing behavioral, ways in which the upcoming generations, maybe to be naming them alpha or the, Gen Zs, how would, or should the environment also be changing, catering to the change in the generation as well? That's only the question that I wanted to. It's also, the day also marks, I think, the premise. It's a very important day where we have always, observed, maybe Generation Z have a particular way of behaving. They're not, perhaps they are not very serious in the way they think. But today is a very important day, which many of us have already seen in the news, that it's a major change, that the generation have been able to, bring out today. So I think it's also important that, in the spaces that we design for them also has to be now, to be catering to, if at all there may be any, anything that we have to factor in. Thank you.
I think the two big takeaways today from what we have had here today is really for educationists is, what is the future of education? Where is it going? And how do we redefine it? And for architects, I think is, who are we building for? I mean, it's very important because our buildings need to multi-purpose. It needs to reach out to the rest of society. Say the concept of Anganwadis, for example, not just reach out to children, it's to women, it's to society in general. This building, for example, is multi-purpose, for this conference and possibly for other functions. So I'll share with you one experience that I had in a school in Gurgaon, where there was the small piece of land which was empty. It was used by slum kids, and there was this person who actually owned the land and wanted to do this very small sort of primary school, elitist in a way. And you really felt guilty about having to take away this piece of land from the slum kids who used it. So he designed a building in which the lower level, a sort of semi-basement level, was like the kindergarten side, but of course adequately lit and ventilated. And the upper level, about a full double height away, was the other higher primary section. So when the school ended at 2 o'clock, you could just open the playground, you open the whole school, so the slum kids could still use the space of the school, all the play areas, without having to enter the classrooms at all. So these are social interventions, social responsibilities that we have as architects, is how do we actually cater to everybody? How do we actually make our buildings not just, single functions, but actually multiple?
Hello, I am Hattie. I'm a research scholar at Calicut University, but originally from the USA. And I've been studying here for a couple of years, doing field research at Common Grounds International Academy. And just, there's been a lot of questions asked and not a lot of time to answer the questions, it seems. But one of them was, how do we actually see the change with teachers? And we have a lot of these conversations about having play-based learning or different kinds of education, but we don't actually see a lot of change with teachers, and that's part of what I'm studying. But one of those things is that in order to see a system change, we actually need to see a belief change. And that belief change has to be throughout the system. And one of the things I'm studying is how do we see a belief change in adults who already have our frames of reference and our assumptions and our things are already shaped. And so one of the theories I'm looking at, transformative learning theory, talks about how you need a disorienting dilemma or like a disruption to your way of thinking as an adult. And so I think that actually is some of what this architecture does, is it creates this disruption to the normal way of thinking of how our parents and our educators normally look at schools. When we're able to embrace these kind of environments that are incredibly different than the normal, than what's expected, it creates this disruption to our way of thinking as adults. And so it starts that little bit of belief change. Oh, learning can happen in a different environment. Learning can happen in a classroom that doesn't look like how I was raised or what I expect a classroom to look like. And so we start to learn, and our system, it's not an immediate change. It's a slow process change. But when we see those changes in little communities, like the village communities or Bangalore with these other schools, we start to open up the mindset of the adults that are in the community around us. And so I think it's very valuable, like our friend here mentioned, that we do shape that architecture of schools in particular around how children learn and what are those important things. Like I love that Pooja mentioned teachers were eye level with students. It was a thing that happened in her design she didn't realize was going to happen. But actually, if you work with lower primary students, you know that's a really important form of their learning, to be eye level. And so those kind of things, to draw those into your architectural designs, how do I create spaces that do draw in the learning needs of all kinds of children, but also kind of disrupt the normal of what people tend to expect from schools. So thank you very much for all you guys shared today. I found it very interesting and really enjoyed it.
I'm beginning to forget all the questions that have been asked. So I'll try to address a couple of them. And I think just a comment first, because this is a conclave that is centered on the idea of architecture, we're trying to put a lot of responsibility on the architects. That it's you make a great building and therefore great learning will happen. I think architects will do the best they can. There are many other things and one of the things that I would invite our architects and our architect students to do is over the last 20 years or so that there's been tremendous research in the area of education, in the area of school education, in terms of what actually works. And it's fantastic, it's extensive. I'll give you just one example. Any line of research has its limits and all of that, but this is work by somebody called John Hattie. And what he's done a meta-analysis covering about, thousands of studies, millions of students, and he has 252 factors of what actually makes a difference in terms of learning. And it includes things like all kinds of things like homework, where the homework makes a difference, or small class sizes make a difference and all of that. And the number one factor, the one that has the greatest effect size across this analysis is collective teacher efficacy, which means what is the belief that a set of teachers have that they can make a difference? Okay. So when teachers collectively believe they can make a difference, that seems to have the biggest impact on learning outcome, more than anything else that you can imagine. In fact, in those effect sizes, homework is something like 120th in that list. It doesn't actually make a difference. So I think there's a lot that we can learn from what is emerging in education. And that's also a group that has not been talked about today in terms of architecture, which is the teachers. Because the users of a school are the students and the teachers. And how teachers use the school is important. I mean, what do you do together? I mean, do you collaborate as teachers? Do you problem solve as teachers? what happens in a school? Are you trusted as a teacher? And I think to come back to one of the questions that was posed about why things haven't changed, things have changed, but in pockets, in small pockets. There's been tremendous change in how education was transacted. And I think the reason why it hasn't changed at scale is probably a little bit to do with, I don't know if it's the most important reason, but I think one of the main reasons could be that we have not actually invested enough in teacher professional development. And teacher professional development does not just mean training in pedagogical skills, but it means creating the professional identity of the teacher. That it's something that you aspire towards, it's something that you want to do. Very often today, school teachers take up teaching because it's a fallback option, right? Because they haven't been able to get through the IIT JEE mains, right? So, there are other reasons, I'm sure. So I would invite the architects and the architect students to do, if you can, look at two things. One is the research on what actually happens. There's significant research. And the second is to also think about the teachers in the school and how they use the space in the school. That might be interesting thing to think about when you're designing schools.
Hello, my name is Parinita. I teach postgraduate students English literature. I found the sessions very interesting because I think you spoke about space. I have always been preoccupied with teaching as knowledge and not about the material, spatial location of that teaching. And I think Manas, in a sense, spoke about the intersection of inquiry and transmission. You said that learning is both transmission and inquiry. So we need a set of known ways in which we exist in the world. And that is transmitted. But then the world changes. And there are different sorts of people who are learning. And therefore, the inquiry part comes. And when we learn in terms of our bodies. We learn from our different social locations. We learn from our different class locations. Therefore, is an equal system really equal? Because the participants of that equal system are unequal. And therefore, there is the architecture of knowing and being in the world, and there is the architecture of the material space through which that knowing and being in the world is kind of transmitted and taught. And in that sense, I think the liminal space that Bijoy spoke of, always there is this liminal space where we are exploring how to be an inquirer as well as a transmitter, how to be in the ways that we have been taught, and how to kind of negotiate with the new transformations that are taking in the world. For example, the change in technology, the change in the material world. And therefore, I think many of you, for example, Anand as well as Pooja, you spoke about how, Pooja spoke about how the student's point of view became important and how the children use the way your school in very new ways which you hadn't even anticipated. And Anand spoke about how the blind can be accommodated within a space that has always been for the sighted. You're not building a space, you're not building the architecture of the unsighted. You are incorporating them into the architecture of learning for the sighted. But that means you have to change that architecture. So in a sense, I think all of you, in a sense, are negotiating with this. You are struggling with this, how to negotiate between being in the world and knowing in the world, and how to negotiate the changes that are taking place between that being in the world and knowing about the world. And as Siddharth said, you can get out of the classroom, you can go out, but then when you use that space in a particular way, you're also building an architecture for it. No space is without a marker or a mapping of it. So we are always mapping space. But I think historically that mapping can change. When new classes of people, new groups of people enter, that mapping changes. And architecture, I think, for me, it gave a very new perspective, okay, about the material mapping of knowledge, about the architecture of the material spaces through which learning takes place. So thank you very much.
We're actually drawing to a close, so maybe we can wind up with final reflections, comments from the speakers. But if anybody wants to share any last comments, feedback, please quickly join in.
Hi, my name is Marva, and yes, I completed architecture course, and then I had a baby. And I found the contrast, like what did I learn and what am I doing in with my baby. So my baby was not able to take up the environment. That means she had sensory processing disorder. That means every sound, every light, everything around her was overwhelming for her. So I started figuring out, and then somehow I figured out that the design, what I learned, is not answering me. I spent 5 years in a college, and it's not answering my thing. So that's what I'll answer what he was also asking. Then in architecture college, we learned how to build, and we didn't learn who we are building for the psyche. We didn't learn that. For the brain, how the brain is developing, how the baby is developing, how the environment is causing. We build very sophisticated homes, and architecturally it's a cloud. But then when we come to the baby, the child, we say 100 no's in our own home where it should be the first school. And when they are jumping on the couch, we say a big no to them. But then they are supposed to do that, but we were not aware of that. So there comes the prepared adult. When a baby is born, how the prepared adult we have to be. Not we are going to train the child. And then when I relate to my architecture lessons, it is about the prepared environment that we need to learn about. So throughout my research for the past 5 years, I came across architecture psychology, which was something new for me. And I really have to say all the new students here who are learning architecture explore these phases also, because that is the future of architecture. So building for human psyche, human brain. And when I look into it, there's only one university in the world. It said two, but one is only prominent that's teaching the architecture psychology. So why is that so? And then one more thing is, there is another course which an educator, psychologist, and an architecture can learn. That is neuroscience applied to architectural design. So these are areas that can be explored by the architects, where Manasa has said that do your research to the architects. I'm opening these segments, that is architecture psychology, neuroscience applied to architecture design. So this is the future of architecture, where we are designing to the psyche of the humans. Thank you.
Hello. I'll just put it very short because of the time. A small point, which might be a critical point, which is a basic root problem of the schooling problem. Because most of the spaces or infrastructure schooling is designed for getting human race to be obedient to a system. So one important thing, an example also, a closed classroom, the teacher having a miniature lathi. And lathi is what is happening in Delhi is very relatable. So one important point is that he made children climb tree, they fall down, they learn how to rise again. That's an important lesson. So schooling should have a practice. It's an art. That art's name is descent. There should be a space, the infrastructure and design should facilitate descent. Unless and until this particular practice is practiced by human beings, the society will, it will decay. And this process of descent, this process of reasoning, this process of questioning leads to the correction of the society, and later on it leads to many questions internally also. So the space designed and the infrastructure, the schooling system should propagate dissent. And if, unfortunately, the entire schooling system in the whole world is designed for obedience. So there are many things to be unlearned in school before learning. That's an important point.
Hello, my name is Sumita. I've taught some part of my life. I've been a designer some part of my life. I was really excited when I was coming for this conclave, and it has been a very interesting conclave, except that I've just found the voice of teachers and students missing. The teachers and students who maybe study in this school, their experience of the school, what they wanted to be and what they wanted to become, I think would have been a relevant voice to have come in.
Siddharth?
I don't actually have anything to say, but Abid handed me the mic, so I have to say something. I just want to say, and I said it at the beginning of my presentation, how enormously moving and enriching it has been for me to listen to the others who spoke today. And again in the conversation just now, to hear the kinds of concerns that people have, primarily as architects, because this room is primarily architects. It would be so reductive to say that in a school, ultimately what matters the most is the quality of human interactions, and everything else flows from that. There is a truth in that. But I think one thing I take away from today is that there's an equally important other truth, which has to do with how spaces can either facilitate this or do the opposite. And so I'm really grateful for having had this opportunity to just listen and be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again, Abid, for inviting me and to the Coearth Foundation. It's been a wonderful day for me, particularly to hear, just as Siddhartha said, that, you know, being in the company of course, wonderful architects and friends, but also the two of you. And this conversation actually is also, you know, prompting me to reconsider many things. I mean, to think about how, in a way, passively we come at projects. I mean, we're, in a way, as Satya had already mentioned, we are servicing the clients in many projects. We are coming at it in response to something that the client is feeding us. And maybe, you know, many of the questions are about going back maybe to, you know, Khan had, I mean, to go back to Khan, whenever in doubt, go back to Khan. He had this kind of dichotomy. He talked about form and design. And design is the circumstantial. I mean, a lot of the things that you said, you know, particularly about sensory things or, you know, conditions that maybe you have to, like Anand's project, these are the circumstances of the project. There are budgets, there are kinds of people you're trying to serve, you're trying to be empathetic, there's a site. And so design is that. It's the response to circumstance. And most architects, in a way, are trained to do that well, to hopefully have empathy and to engage with what is physically seen in an honest and with integrity. But the other part of it is the challenging part for the architect, the idea of form, you know, this idea of beginnings, of this kind of larger question, and that's the question that many of you posed, you know, who are we working, who are we doing this for, what is it to teach, what is it to be in a learning environment? these are sort of abstract questions that I guess you constantly are, thinking of and trying to figure out ways in which to come to some resolution. And that is, I think, the search of, essential to most architecture work, that you're trying to bring together the idea of circumstance or this response to circumstance and this larger ideal of what is a school or what is a public building or what is a I don't know, an event venue, whatever it is, even the banal things have a sort of larger ideal in the way that community comes together. So thanks for inviting me and thanks for prompting me to think again of these beginnings of the larger ambitions that as architects, all of us have to carry.
Yeah, first of all, it was very interesting, of course, to listen to all the presenters today. But the most interesting part was this discussion where, to listen to, we generally go to only architects' presentation and we only listen architecture. And this time, I think this is fantastic to, listen about how other side is looking at us, looking at the buildings, and that gives a lot of references for us to do the future projects, to understand. And there are certain questions. I think there are a lot of questions from the people were saying about the architecture education and education in general, like, because it's a day for we are talking about schools and learnings and the spaces and the system. I think it's the most important factor of anybody's life. If you see something has been shaped so well, it is because of the two things mostly. Is one is the teacher or a mentor he or she got, and the second is the atmosphere the person grew up in. Both the things are equally important, and all of us sitting here are some or other way associated to both the things. And as the architecture education, somebody said it's a toxic and a lot of things are happening. That because of the idea you're looking for architecture as something exclusive. And that's why we just talk about architecture as shape and form and materiality and the idea of Instagram that allows us to put something on there on the social media. But it's more than that. Like I was very, very grateful to be having the greatest mentors in my life, and in the best part to be in the best environment also. So I had my mentor KB Jain. We had the first studio where we have to design a prison, and then we never started with the case studies of a prison, or we never started with the idea of security. So first thing he asked us, how can you rehabilitate the psychology of the prisoner? And we were only working on that for the 4 months. And then the rest of the project happened. And then we were looking at movies, we were reading books, we were doing all the sort of things, but looking at architectural case studies. And that is happening in the building, which was designed by Doshi sir, when we used to go out from that 2 feet by 2 feet of a window to get the chai, come back and see how we are not actually prisoners, but in the free space. So both the things matter equally, and how are we looking at it? How are the education looking at it? Because we were talking about Herman's project, and I was reading him. So he's saying in one of the articles that he has designed a beautiful building, which he thinks is a very free for everybody to occupy, but the teacher and the system is ruined it, the experience for everyone. So there are six teachers stands in the front of the gate every morning and count every student who is coming in. So when you're coming in the free building and then you see these faces who are actually, so how does architecture is responsible for it, or the system is responsible? So I think all of us has to work together. So I really liked today's best takeaway for what from Siddharth's presentation was, we are responsible only for our kids, our home, our parents, our work. Are we responsible for everybody? When I am designing a house, am I responsible for a person walking from my next to my house? I am responsible for my neighbor. I am responsible for so many people. If we start thinking like that, I think it's a collective effort, and that is what I think this conclave has done really fantastic. And thank you for giving such a fantastic experience and inviting us here.
Anand, would you like to add anything? No? Okay. So I was quite curious is how this was going to turn out, because usually architects are used to talking to architects. And I was curious how the others in the room, and though a lot of you are saying that this is a room full of architects, it actually isn't. Only half the hall are architects. The other half are non-architects. We've had half the hall registrations as non-architects. Maybe 60-40 or 55-45. Yeah, so for us, I mean, I've not attended a lot of other conferences where there are others in the room. And I was quite conscious when the three architects were presenting and thinking, what would these others be thinking when they see somebody with slides of light coming from one particular window and talking about it for 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Manas, I don't know if you want to venture to reply to that, or in some sense feedback for us as an event and how it is to be part of an architecture, a conference which talks, where there's a lot of talk about architecture. And how do you see it? One. I also just wanted to respond to some of the comments that there is, on one side, there is the spatial, which is what we do, but there is a social as well. There's the school rules. Like you can have a grand lawn and the principal can say nobody can walk on it. So I don't think we're saying that architecture is over and above everything. I think there is a social side to an organization and there's a spatial side to an organization. And when they both relate, respond, and complement each other, it works well. Otherwise, you have, as some of you said, you can have a great building in a poor institution, or you can have a great institution in a poor building. I think what we're trying to say through the conference is that every organization has a philosophy, has a set of values and set of aspirations, and there is a kind of building that aligns with that enables it. And ideally what we want is for educators to be telling us what is the kind of organization they want, what is the kind of school you want, what do you want, what are the questions that you're asking, and then therefore what is the architecture that needs to enable that. And hopefully I think we can all get there soon, and we don't have the same schools that we were building 200, 300 years ago. And with that, I'd like to thank all of you for joining in today. I know even with 2 hours, a lot of questions remain unanswered. Feel free to pick each other's brains afterwards. But I don't also assume that all questions will be answered in a day's conference. I'll leave it to Manas to conclude.
Yeah, so I think fundamentally, if we look at education, it's about conversations and expanding our horizons. So there is no question that we need to have conversations with people who come from different perspectives, different areas of expertise. We need, because just like architects have their conferences and speak about architecture, people who work in education have their conferences, and we have our own echo chambers. And I think it's just, I think, brilliant that you're bringing together people from different perspectives. I think it's truly enriching for me, definitely. But it's also because I'm fascinated by architecture. I have no formal training, but it's something that always fascinates me. So, and in fact, when I was invited for this conference, I was initially imagining that I would say something about architecture of schools, and I realized that I know nothing about it. So, so instead of pretending to, make some smart comments about architecture of schools, I decided to go back to fundamentals and talk about what is school for. And I think that that's what needs to happen, is that we get people from different perspectives and areas of expertise to come, speak their minds, and we listen. What Siddharth is saying is so true, that it's about listening and trying to understand those perspectives. And that has been done really well. I think this is great. Thank you, Abid, and the entire Coearth team for making this happen. It's been wonderful, absolutely lovely. Thank you so much.